All right, everyone. Welcome to the first official episode of SpiritYOUality. I have a very special guest, somebody who I dearly love and affectionately refer to as cousin. Um, and that is David Meyers, although he spells his last name wrong. It's
Oh,
the proper spelling is Myers. That's our little fun thing that we go back and forth about. But David is somebody that I got to know initially in my deconstruction process. A number of years ago, we connected on social media and just one of those amazing souls that you feel like you've known him for years. And he really does feel like family to me. So, this is a really special conversation that I hope you all enjoy and take something valuable away from. So yeah, David, thank you so much for hanging out with me and, kicking off this podcast.
dude, I'm so honored. This is wonderful. And I'm proud of you for stepping out there and doing this. Very cool. I'm very honored. Thank you.
It means a lot. So where in the world are you, David? Tell us about what you have going on right now.
So I am in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I am in the desert. I am a desert dweller. I love the desert. It's amazing.
And I don't mean to interrupt you, but I love how you talk about your city because that's something that's always stood out like in our conversations. So tell me what's special to you about living in Albuquerque? Because you grew up there, right? Or you grew
Yeah,
okay.
honestly, I think so. Albuquerque is very peculiar. It's very unique. It's a big city, small town, right?
Mm.
It's like the 32nd largest city in the country. So we have major metropolitan problems and issues, but we're a small town. Everybody knows everybody, right? We're very tight knit, very interwoven, very interconnected, which I think lends to the brilliance of Albuquerque. For whatever reason, you can, if you're from here or whatever, you're like, hey, do you know David? You're like, yeah, I do know David, right? But if you were to go to Atlanta, be like, hey, do you know Derek? Like, what? 5 million people that live in Atlanta. That's crazy. For whatever reason, you can do that here. So it's very special in that way, but it's also a very, like, it's like a little secret that I don't want a lot of people to know about. Like, keep the Californians in California. Like, we're good. You know what I mean? Like, keep the Texans in Texas. Like, we're all right. It's old, bro. It's got old bones. It's got history and culture. The longest continuously inhabited place in all of the Americas is here in New
Wow.
Mexico. Yeah, it's up in Taos. Albuquerque's older than the country.
Crazy.
It's it's wild. And New Mexico, this is wild. New Mexico is older than Mexico. If that makes sense. It's wild. So again, it's just got a lot of history and culture, and it's almost like you can feel it. It's like a tangible spiritual thing, right? They call it the land of enchantment, and that's not by accident. You actually feel this connection to the ground and to the sky. It's a really wonderful place. Now, I'm not a Pollyanna. We have issues because we're a major metropolitan city, just like any other major metropolitan city, where we have some crime and we have some homelessness and we have some of those things going on. But I don't see those as necessarily problems per se, but invitations on how to get better.
Mm.
I worked for the fire department. And again, I'm just so grateful that I get to do that. Absolutely love what I do. I wake up every day and I'm like, oh my gosh, I get to do this. They pay me to do this. And so I'm out in the city all the time. I'm out in the community all the time. And I love just getting to know a lot of these folks and getting to hear their stories. And it'll blow your mind how these people operate and live and do their thing. And it's very, to me, it's very eye opening, but also very humbling. You know what I mean? Some people, especially from the fireside, just a lot of crisis, a lot of trauma. And I get to be there with them,
Mm.
right? Through some of those things, even if our interaction is, 15, 20 minutes, but it's very beautiful connections. Like, I don't remember who said it, but he says, oh, tell me you love the poor, right? Okay. Tell me their names,
Mm.
right? I have so many stories and I can give you names of folks. And if you just sit down and listen to them, you'll just be, oh my gosh, like your heart will just be branded in so many ways. And yeah, it's a pretty wonderful job that I have here in the city, but it's also a very wonderful city, very beautiful city. I love it, man. It's great.
Yeah, and I love that you have such a passion for your city. You know, when we one of the first times that we met, in fact, I think it was the first time that we met when you were out in Atlanta. I remember you had such a riveting story about an encounter that you had with somebody who I believe was unhoused and, who you just happened to run into. And what I love about you, David, is that those things, and I think you've even said this with your own words, is that um, those experiences with people and, unique stories, they find you. And like, I think that you carry something so special about how you care for people. And I think that's why you're in the perfect position with the fire department, being able to be so actively involved in giving to so many people that are in need around you. Can you share like how you've grown to understand yourself and humanity better through your job with the fire department?
Oh, yeah. I think we were talking off camera about experience, right? Like, I think experience is key.
Mm,
You can believe something, right? And then something enters your backyard that completely contradicts what you always ever believed. And now you've got a decision to make, right? It's like, oh no, what do I do now? And I think that the more you expose yourself to different experiences, right? Again, experience is key, and experience is what changes our perspective, I believe. And like I said, you can be so focused on one thing and then something just right, the interruption happens. And it's like, okay, now I have to make a decision of what I truly believe. But I think that it's always ever been about people. I don't know what it is. I guess I'm an empath, right? I think I fall in love with people too easily, right? Which can be a blessing and a curse. Um, but I love to hear stories through other people's perspective. Like I hate with all my heart surface level conversation. I can't stand it. Right.
why that's why we connected so quickly because I'm the same way.
It's
Small
like,
talk is like agonizing to me. I'm like, "Ugh,
yeah,
can
yes.
we dive deeper?"
Right. I want to know thing behind the thing behind the thing. Like what woke you up today? Why are you doing what you're doing? Like, what is your plan? Like, I want to know those things. I want to know what breaks your heart. I want to know what makes you laugh. I want to know those things. And just running these calls, like the fire department, especially here, pound for pound per capita, we're one of the busiest in the country.
Wow.
And so we see a lot of things. We experience a lot of things. And it's wild because I think that in some other cities, like fire departments just only do fire. We do everything. You call 911, a fire truck's showing up,
Mm,
right? So fire, medical, and I would say 80% of our calls are medical related. And so it runs the gamut, right? We'll get a call and you show up on scene and it's the most heartbreaking thing you've ever seen in your entire life.
mm.
And then we clear that call and we get another call right after that. And it's the most hilarious thing you've ever seen in your entire life, right? And then you clear that call and you get to the next one and it's the saddest thing you've ever seen. And then the next one is you're the most pissed off you've ever been. And then the next one is the most exhilarating thing you've ever done, like all in a day.
Mm,
And it's like, how do you process those things, right? Because that's a lot. That's a lot of exposure to a lot of different feelings and experiences and stuff like that. And so again, I think the more you run these calls, the more people you interact with, you have a choice. You can become like the judge of a lot of these folks because a lot of people, and I would say this is pretty fair for every city, a lot of people use 911 as their healthcare,
mm.
right? They don't have a whole lot. They don't have a primary care doctor. They don't have the resources that we have and those kinds of things. And so for me, I really take my job serious where I treat people like they're my family. I treat them like if guys were to show up and run on my children, you know, you better treat them with the best, most utmost respect and things like that. So I try to do that. And again, within that, again, our exchanges aren't all that long, right? 30 minutes, maybe an hour, maybe that's a long call, but what can we do in that short period of time where we can not make it worse, but make it just a little bit better?
Mm.
Maybe it is, just tending to a wound or something, but maybe it also is a kind word or gesture. One of my favorite stories that I have in the fire department isn't even a call that we actually got. it was a knock at the door at the station. It's one of the most phenomenal stories I tell, but it has everything to do with, just human interaction and empathy and compassion. And I think that those are the intangibles to being a good firefighter.
Mm.
I don't think it necessarily has to be who's the strongest, who's the smartest. Maybe you need those things, of course, but compassion and empathy, you'll be a good firefighter. We can teach you all those other things, right? We can make you strong, but if you have those built-in intangibles, I think that's a good starting point for what a good firefighter is or what a good firefighter should be.
Now I'm curious, and I'm sure others, when you mentioned this story of the person who knocked on the door at the
You want me
fire.
to tell you?
Yeah, I'd love to hear it because to me, again, speaking of experience, it's fascinating that when we come across people, especially in a moment of need, I feel like you see the most vulnerable parts of humanity,
Mhm.
right? And that can be a lot, like you said, it can be a lot to process. But so much of our lives, right? Our biggest moments, our most profound moments that stick with us are often in that place of great need. And I think that, oftentimes we have a very limited scope of what we're exposed to, maybe
Right.
our, the vulnerable experiences of our own life or the lives of our immediate family, perhaps our extended family. But for you, you're getting exposed to some really raw and, genuinely challenging moments for a lot of folks. So that one in particular, it sounds like it was definitely moving. Obviously, it stuck with you.
Yeah, it's my favorite thing I get to say about everything I've ever done. And I've run a lot of calls, but this one in particular, buckle up. So I was at station 15 and I was on probation. It was my rookie year. And when you're the rookie, you do everything. You're the first one up. You're the last one to bed. You're putting the flag up. You're taking the flag down. You're cooking all the meals. You're the first one onto the call. You're the one at the end of the hose line. Like you're doing all the work. And then your officer's telling you what to do. Your driver gets you there safely. And it's a really beautiful way that we do it, but it's a lot of work for a rookie, right? So one particular evening, we're making chow and I'm cutting like zucchini or something, right? And just getting ready for dinner. And we get a knock at the door. And everyone's like, go see who it is, Rook. And I'm all right. So I go to the door and it's these two elderly couple and they show up and I'm like, hey, how's it going? Welcome to station 15. Come on in. And I invited them in and they're like shocked. They're like looking around like, oh my gosh, we're so sorry. We didn't mean to interrupt dinner. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's okay. It happens all the time. Very rarely do we actually get to sit down and eat together without getting interrupted by a call or something, right? It's fine. It's what we do. And so we're like, how can we help you? Right. And they said, it's not an emergency. We just need some help. And I said, okay, what do you need help with? And they said, we have a friend who's dying and she could go at any minute. And we just need her picked up from her bed in her bedroom and taken to her hospice bed in the den. And we all look at each other like, that's it. Yeah, yeah, no, that's it. That's all we need. And so the captain comes in and he hears this and he says, okay, yeah, that's easy. Yeah. Okay. How about rescue guys? You go do that. So on our rescues, which is like our ambulances, there's two guys on a rescue. So he sends the rescue. Can you guys handle that? Yes. Yeah, Cap, we got it. So they follow the elderly couple to the home. Right. And I go back to cutting vegetables. And the captain comes up to me and he looks at me and I look at him and he goes, what are you thinking? And I was like, I don't know, Cap. I think we should all go. And he goes, okay, yeah, yeah, let's all go. So he gets on the horn and he says, hey, station 15, mount up. We're all going. So we're in a big station. It's called a multiple. Okay. We have a ladder truck. We have a pumper, it's like a fire engine. And we have a rescue. And so there's three guys on a ladder. There's four guys on a pumper. There's two guys in a rescue. So that's a lot of manpower, a lot of apparatus, right? It's a big show of force, if you will. So we show up to the house, all three trucks, and all these dudes get off the truck. And the owner of the house walks out and he's just completely overwhelmed. And he's like, oh my gosh, we were not expecting this. And he covers his mouth and he starts sobbing, right? I'm the first one in and I put my hand on his shoulder and I'm like, hey, boss, where are we headed? And he goes, oh, yeah, I'm so sorry. And he starts wiping his tears away. Oh, yeah, just head on in, down the hall and to the right. Okay, sounds good, boss. Again, I'm the first one in the house. And I kid you not, as soon as I crossed the threshold of this house, it was like, oh, like a tangible, thick presence of calm and peace. Like it hit you in the face, right? And I crossed and I went, oh my gosh. Like I felt it. And I was like, okay, all right. This is what we're up against. Okay, cool. And so we walk in, and the sense of peace in this house was just overwhelming, right?
Mm.
And everywhere we go, there's like in this room here, there's like friends and family. And then in this hall here, there's friends and family. And everywhere we're going, there's friends and family throughout the house. And they're all just silent and crying and very obviously emotional. But they're all like, who are these guys? What are they doing here? Right? Kind of like, because all of us showed up for something that didn't need all of us. Right? This isn't an emergency. It's not like we needed the jaws of life to get people out of a car or something. It's like, why did 9 guys show up with, you know, $3 million worth of apparatus, fire apparatus? And like, it was just like, who are these guys kind of thing. And so we make our way down the hall, and we make our way into her bedroom. And I walk in the bedroom. Derek, I kid you not, bro. They said she's minutes away from dying. She was sitting up in her bed, and she's got this beautiful white nightgown. And she had this long, gorgeous, beautiful silver hair
Mm.
and the most incredible smile you've ever seen in your entire life. This woman was glowing,
Wow.
right? And she was strikingly beautiful, striking. Like you wouldn't tell she's minutes away from death. It was wild. Like I was expecting something completely different. You know what I mean? This was not her. And she was so full of joy. It was unbelievable. Like I said, unless you were there experiencing it, even what I'm telling you now isn't doing it its due, justice or whatever. It was remarkable, man. So she's sitting up in her bed, just prim and proper, just again, strikingly beautiful, and in this glow about her. And so the rescue officer, he walks up and he says, okay, ma'am, here's what we're going to do. We're going to roll you on one side and tuck the blanket here. And we're going to put you on this side and tuck the blanket over here. And we're going to grab it like this and just explain to her the process that we do when we carry folks. And so sure enough, we pick her up and we just start walking her down a hallway. And the whole time we're passing people and they're like, ah, hey. You know what I mean? It's like this holy hush was in this house. And we walk her down the hall, and then we walk her into the den and we lay her on her hospice bed. Right. And again, there's like this sigh, like, right. Like we can relax now. And so the captain looks around, he says, okay, there you go. Like, what else do you need? You need some furniture moved? You got 9 guys here. You need us to build something for you real quick? Like, what else do you need? And they said, that was it. That's literally all we needed. Thank you. And the woman, the wife of the husband who greeted us at the beginning, she comes out and she says, you guys don't know what you just did. And we're all, huh? I guess we don't, because we just moved a lady. Like, that's not heroic, right? This isn't going to be like any kind of firefighter movie or, you know what I mean? Like, she says, you don't know what you just did. And so the captain says, if you don't need anything else from us, then we'll get out of your hair. And we start to file out one by one. And this woman grabs every single one of us like we're her child and kisses every single one of us on our cheek. Every single one of us. And she hugs us tight and she whispers in our ear, you don't know what you just did. Right? I was the first one in the room. So now as we're filing out, I'm the last one out. So I laid the woman in her hospice bed. I was holding her feet. So I laid her there. And as I'm leaving, like, what do you say? Right? Have a good one.
Yeah.
Right? Take it easy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ruin the moment. So I chose not to say anything. And as I'm walking past her, she smiles at me and I smile at her and she reaches her hand out for me and I grab her hand and she pulls me in and she says, can I tell you something? And I'm like, yeah, sure. She says, I just need to tell you that this was one of the most incredible days of my entire life.
Mm.
And I went, "Ugh," just snot and tears, and I lost it. And you know me a little bit, bro. I cry at everything. I am a crier. I cry in commercials. I just cry. And I lost it. Right. And as I make my way out, the other woman grabs me and hugs me and she kisses me on the cheek and she says, "You don't know what you just did." And I'm just like a mess, bro. And so we start filing out and I get back into the truck and I'm like looking out the window. Like I don't want to face the guys. Right. And I'm a mess. Right. And so I'm just like looking out the window. Yeah. And they're like, "Myers." And I'm like, "What?" And they're like, "Myers." And I'm like, "What do you want?" And so finally they call me again, "Myers." And I'm like, "What?" And I turn to them and all of them in the truck look at me and they go, "Oh man, you too, huh?" And we're all a mess. We're
Wow.
all emotional mess. And so we get back to the station and we end up finishing dinner, right? 9 type A alpha male jackass firefighters, right? Overly opinionated dorks are sitting around the table and nobody said a word. Not a word, bro. And it was like, what was that? That was incredible. And it wasn't even a call. We weren't dispatched to it, right? It's like I said, it's not going to be that story is never going to be in Chicago Fire or Rescue 911 or whatever those shows are, right? But for me, it was a very formidable moment in my career. And it wasn't even really anything, but it was everything, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Just the peace in the house and the way the people were and the way that she was, it was just, dude, it was just incredible. And so the next cycle, I'm in the bay and I'm washing the truck, right? And the bay doors open and this gentleman walks up. I swear to God, it was Alfred Brimley. He had the hat, he had the mustache, he had the cigar, he had the glasses, right? Just, it was hilarious. And he walks up and he says, "Are you C?" And I went, "The heck does that? What? I don't know what that means." And he goes, "Are you C?" And I said, "Oh, yes, I'm so sorry. C shift. Yes, sir. We are C shift." And he goes, "Okay." He says, "I have something for you." And he walks up to me and he hands me a card and he says, "I just need you to know something." And I said, "Okay." He says, "That woman you helped the other day, that was my wife." And I
Mm.
went, "Oh, okay." He says, "She passed the very next day. And I just thought you should know."
Mm.
And I said, "Oh my goodness." I said, "I'm so sorry to hear that. What a beautiful woman she was. I'm sure she was an even better, wife and partner and whatever she was to you. I'm sorry for your loss." And he looks down, takes a puff of his stogie, and he says, "I also need you to know something else." I said, "Okay, what's that?" He said, "You don't know what you did that day." And I'm like, "Ah, gosh, they keep saying this." Right. And then he tips his cap and he turns around and he walks away. And I just sat there with the brush, that I was washing the truck with. And I'm just like, my goodness. Right. We were there to help somebody die with dignity. Maybe that's what we did. You know what I mean? And maybe that's all of us are here to do is just help people reclaim their dignity when they're living or help them die with it. I don't know. But it obviously was a big deal to them. And it obviously was a big deal to us. And for me personally, like that's my favorite story I get to tell. Like I have stories of me almost dying in a building and having to jump out of a second story window and crazy things. And those are cool and fun. This one is the one that I get to tell. That's my favorite. And again, I don't really know what we did, but we were there, we were available, and we did it with the utmost professionalism. And yeah, man, it was remarkable.
Wow. What is that speechless sensation secondhand as you're talking about
Yeah.
that? And just those words of you have no idea what you did.
Mhm.
Like I'm sure those words are gonna ring in your ears forever, and thank you so much
Yeah.
for sharing that. Something that strikes me about that whole experience is the power of, like, gratitude even,
Hmm.
just how something that seems so menial, so simple,
Right.
so, like, in the grand scheme of things, unimportant, right? Like,
Right.
how somebody from a different vantage point, right? Another experience that was just so huge and helpful. And how just showing up, right? Showing up for somebody in a moment of need, whether that is somebody who's just wanting to have their dignity and die in peace, pass in peace, or
Hmm.
whether that's a family that felt like they didn't have anywhere else to turn, or whether that is, a stranger that you meet in a random city that you're
Hmm.
traveling to that just wanted to feel seen.
Hmm.
It's showing up,
Yeah.
right? And being able to make yourself available. Like you said, hey, I may not be able to change the world here with this particular situation. I can't undo the fact that they just lost someone dear to them.
Right.
But I can show up and
Right.
I can offer of myself. And I think that speaks volumes to that connectedness that you were even talking about, which was so special about Albuquerque. But what I find to be so special about life in general, and like how we step back and just recognize that we're all connected, right?
And I think that's the key, right? That's the word right there. Are we aware? Do we recognize the holiness that's always ever around us? Or are we too focused and too busy that we miss everything on our right and on our left, right? Rob Bell talks about we pass burning bushes on our right and on our left because we're too, our heads down. Hey, how's it going? Oh, good. I'm busy, right? We're all busy. But we live our lives like that, like we're robots and we miss so many things. I think that maybe we're just aware, at least a little more aware that day, you know? And that's something that I try to teach my guys too is, these simple practices of gratitude, like what you're talking about, being aware, having situational awareness. We teach that in the fire service, right? Seeing the bigger picture. And when you're given a task, so it's like, all right, Derek, here's a hose line, go and put the fire out, go find the seat of the fire. You giving that order, you are very task oriented. But what we teach our guys is, but don't forget the bigger picture, right? Um, Look for things that might kill you along the way and slow those down and get to the next thing that's going to kill us and slow it down to where we can go do what we need to do. But when we get so task oriented, that's when we put ourselves in harm's way because we're not seeing everything around us that could harm us or whatever. So again, we teach our guys that. But even on another level, like a spiritual level, or even just, you know what I mean? Like, are we paying attention to those things that are always constantly around us? Or are we just too busy that we miss everything, you know?
Yeah. No, that's so true. I think that's why having a practice of, some form of contemplation and why, even meditation is talked about as being such a helpful practice of, you know, actively slowing down, right?
Mhm.
Finding moments to where we can pause and reflect. And I know for me, my mind is so active constantly,
Right.
different impulses. Oh, I need to check my phone or this and this going on and that. And but how I coming back to my body, coming back to the moment and being like, no, the present is all that is. How can I
Right.
show up in this moment? How can I, because to your point, like if we're not living in the now, right? We're then missing the opportunities for us to experience all that life is making available to us, right? I'm probably going to butcher it, but William Paul Young even talks about something like I'm not a very disciplined person, but one thing I have learned is to live within the grace of each day. And I think that goes even further to like the grace of each moment, right? Like I can't try to, that speaks to our anxieties, it speaks to our worries. But I think so much of, moving through life and recognizing the people in front of us, right? The way that we can experience all that life has to offer us, the grace of each moment, right? Is to try to be as present as possible,
Absolutely.
to be aware of our surroundings, to be aware of, okay, my body, I'm here, and to be here now, right? I think that what is that? That's like a Richard Rohr thing, Richard Rohrism.
Yeah.
Your buddy.
Hey, Richard Rohr's from Albuquerque too.
That's right. So switching gears a little bit, thank you again. That was such a, just a beautiful picture of just what it means for us to care for humanity and to be, again, showing up. But just switching gears here, I know people are probably curious about the guitars in the background. And for those who don't know much about you, can you share about how music has played a role in your life and, even to this day, like how that's another outlet, an expression for you?
So I was born into a very musical family. My parents were evangelists and they traveled the country and we traveled with them. Talented family. My mom has the greatest voice ever. It's so soothing to me and things like that. I don't know if you see her microphone up there, but
Oh,
that,
cool.
that's her gold microphone that she would always sing with. My stepdad is such a great songwriter and stuff like that. My little brother is he's a damn prodigy. Like I hate his guts. So good, bro. He's just a virtuoso. He's probably the best guitar player in the city of Albuquerque,
Wow.
and he's even a better drummer. It's wild.
Wow.
Yeah, and my older brother plays bass, and so yeah, I just was steeped in it, but I was never interested in it. Right, growing up, I wanted to play basketball. I had a basketball scholarship to Southwestern in Arizona,
I don't think I knew
and
that. That's awesome.
yeah, and I turned it all down to start a band one day, right? And which pissed off my dad royally. Obvious, right? Looking back, I'm like, that was pretty wild. But yeah, started a band. I didn't really, and we started like in our youth group, like doing praise and worship and stuff like that. And I wasn't always like, because I hate the sound of my voice. I cannot listen to my own recordings. It drives me insane. And so I only started singing because nobody else would, right? It wasn't like, I'm a great singer and I want to be a singer and I'll be the singer for this band. It was never that. It was like, okay, I guess I'll do it. But then anything we would record, I would never listen to it because it's like nails on a chalkboard to me. Um, but years later, we had started our band and we actually became somewhat successful, moderately successful, if you will. We toured with all the big bands and played a lot of the big venues and music festivals. And, we did it. We did it for 15 years and it was awesome. It was great until, you had a family and it doesn't lend itself to families, right? Touring and you basically make enough money to make it to the next city kind of thing, right? But it was fun. It was great. And my experience though in it was while it was fun and great and I loved it, I was always writing for record labels. I was always writing for radio. I was always writing for what other people wanted, right? What's going to be the next hit? What's the formula? And those kinds of things. And we were played on the radio and all that stuff. It was fine. But I remember like flying out to do a songwriting session with some big songwriter in Nashville. And I had a song that I really loved. And he was like, "Oh yeah, let's work on this." And he completely butchered it and just took it and I hated it. And I hated the whole process, right? Because he just took the life out of it and made it like this really campy Christian, CCM thing. And I was like, "Oh my God, I'm miserable, bro. This is horrible. There's no life in it. It's not authentic. It's not genuine. It's just formulaic and this is what radio wants,
Yeah. Yeah.
So Now I do it as more of, like you said, an outlet. It's catharsis for me. It's a resource for me. I can go do my job, and my job is very heavy a lot of the times. And so this, I just do it now because it fulfills me. It's enjoyment. And so now I do it from the band of light and shadow. But bro, I don't even care if people listen to it. I could care less. Like I have fun with it and I love it. And I write for me now and I put songs out all the time. And I lose my ass every time because it's expensive to record, put it out.
Yes, it is.
I
Yeah.
don't make any money and I don't care. I don't care if people listen to it. It doesn't bother me one iota. I love it because now I get to write real things about my anxiety, my depression, Nicole's and I's almost divorce. I write about everything that's happened to us. You know, as a matter of fact, I would say last August, almost a year ago, I guess, I was thinking about my uncle. My uncle shot and killed himself 3 years ago. And for whatever reason, he was just real heavy on my heart. And so I sat down and I wrote this song called Ropes and it just went bleh, right? And I went, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
I love it. That's only ever happened to me twice. Usually when I write, right? Yeah. Usually when I write, I'm like curating and I like this line, but I'll only for the cadence and I'll switch it later. And you know, you do massage a song until it's something that you like. This one just went bleh, and I went, oh my gosh, I love it. It's perfect. And so I started just playing with it and I was just in love with it. And then I was like, but is it actually good or do I have some weird emotional attachment to it? 'Cause I was
I hate
thinking
when
about
that
my uncle.
happens. It's the most frustrating thing in the creative process where you're like, you get initially excited about it and then you start criticizing it and the inner
Yes,
like, yeah.
yes. So I was like, I need to find out if this is actually good. So I was like, I went to go find Nicole and because I play her all my stuff and she's like pretty honest. She'll be like, yeah, no, that's trash. Or you need to work on that or that's really good or whatever. So I found her in the den and she's racked out. She's crashed in the couch on the den. And I was like, dang it. I was like, who do I send this to? And so I was like, I'm going to send it to my buddy Wes. Okay. So pause. 17 years ago, my brother and I, we go to a show in Vegas, right? It's like Alter Bridge, my brother's favorite band. I could care less about these guys, but he bought my ticket. It's a free show, whatever. It's like Creed with a different singer.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. My brother's favorite band. And so we're there, we're rocking out, we're having a good time. And I bump into this guy and I'm like, oh, sorry, man. And he's like, oh, no, my fault. And like from there, we became like concert buddies, right? We're like high fiving during guitar solos and stuff. We're having a blast. And then during intermission, he turns to us and he looks at my brother and I and he goes, you guys look cool. Are you guys in a band? And I was like, yeah, we're in a little rock and roll band from Albuquerque. And that was the extent of our conversation. The next band gets up on stage and they finish the show. And then, so at the end of the show, we're high fiving, we're giving hugs. Hey, nice to meet you, bro. You know, bro hugging and dapping each other up. And that was it. We go our separate ways. The very next day, we're walking through the forums at Caesar's Palace, right? Shops everywhere, 5 billion people. There's like sculptures talking to each other and laser light shows. And I'm walking like this, right? I'm totally distracted. I'm not paying attention. And boom, I run into this guy. Same guy.
Oh my gosh.
And he goes, that was random. And I'm like, right? And so he says, oh, I forgot to ask the name of your band. And I went, oh, yeah, we're just a little rock and roll band from Albuquerque called Old Man Shattered. And he went, oh my God, I have to tell you something. And he's getting emotional.
Wow.
He says, a year ago, I was driving through Northern California at a conference, my own conference. And I was leaving my conference to go to my hotel room. He says, I was riddled with anxiety and depression. And as I'm driving to my hotel room, I'm mashing the buttons on the radio, just flying through the radio, just angry, right? He says, for whatever reason, I stop on this weird station and your song is playing. He says, and it wrecked me. He says, so much so that I had to pull over and I just sobbed for like 2 or 3 hours on the side of the freeway in Northern California. He says, I don't know what happened to me that day. He says, but I need to find out who this band is because they just saved my life.
Mm.
Right? Not only did I run into the man one time, twice, bro. Literally, physically ran into the guy. Oh, sorry. In Las Vegas. Like, what? Right? So back to the present. We kept a very close relationship ever since then. So those 17 years, we became pretty close friends. So Nicole's crashed out on the couch. I have this song that I'm like, is it good? Is it not? And I send it to him. I was like, hey, West, what do you think about this? Now, my buddy West is like a huge player in the addiction recovery world. The dude's amazing. Okay. He's basically the guy that single-handedly revamped drug court. Drug court used to be very punitive. Now it's very restorative.
Wow.
You get for drugs, we're sending you to treatment, not prison. Right.
Wow.
He's the guy that changed that. And now there's hundreds of these around the country because of my friend West. He's started 4 or 5 treatment centers.
Wow.
Like, the guy's amazing, bro. He's spoken in the White House and he's met presidents and actors and actresses, athletes, and because he's sponsored all these people too. Right. So I send him the song. And again, it's not even a song at this point. It's just words that I sent.
Good. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And a minute later, he texts me back and he goes, oh my God, David. He says, I felt every word of that in my bones.
Wow.
He said, what are you planning on doing with this? And I went, oh God, I don't know. I just wrote it. Why are you grilling me? You know what I mean? And I said, actually, it's a heavy song about suicide, right? What I do know is that suicide is now surpassing line of duty death in the fire service. And we just went through a suicide in our department. Maybe I just dedicate this song to my brothers and sisters in the fire service and donate it to them and dedicate it to them. And maybe that's just what it is. And he goes, perfect. He says, stand by. Like, stand by? What? 5 minutes later, he texts me back. He says, Dave Cruzen is in. He wants to play on it. Dave Cruzen is the drummer from Pearl Jam. Oh, right? Yeah. And so there was a few other guys that he had texted, like Davy Johnstone and Mike Inez, who were interested and wanted to play on it, but their schedules didn't line up and they weren't able to. Davy Johnstone's the guitar player for Elton John.
Wow.
Mike Inez is the bass player for Ozzy Osbourne.
Wow.
And then I don't know if you remember Charlie Colleen. He just passed a few months ago. He was the songwriter and bass player for the band Tree.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he just passed a few months ago, but I was on the phone with him multiple times and he's like, David, this song's phenomenal.
Wow.
I want to help produce it. I want to help you get it out and I want to play on it. And, very beautiful man. And he was, again, schedule wise, he was like doing some residency with Maroon 5 or something like that.
Wow.
But yeah, West hits me with all this stuff. And I'm like, what is happening, bro? Like, I just wrote this. I have no plan for this. And I was like, this is too much. I'll leave that to you, because the song already did what I intended that song to do. It moved me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And right at that moment, like, I'm happy. So anything that happens after that is like icing on the cake, but I wasn't like worrying about it. You know what I mean? So anyways, we recorded the song. Dave Cruzen plays on it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, how cool is that? Like, who gets to say that? That's pretty neat. So the song is not about my uncle per se, right? It's actually about, have you seen those documentaries of people who jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge and survived?
Yep.
And they interview these people and it's like, my gosh, what was that like? And they said, as soon as my hand let go of the rail, instant regret. So that space, what is that? It's something, right? That liminal space of regret, and maybe their whole life slowed down and they got to think about everyone they've ever loved and those kinds of things, right? That's what the song is about.
Wow.
So it's heavy. It doesn't resolve, and it just is. It just floats there. And so that was the latest one I wrote, and I was pretty pleased with it. But again, I write just as an outlet for me, just a creative outlet, so I can process things that I see and do in creative ways, right? And learn how to cope with what we experience in healthy ways, as opposed to, that was the shitty call we ran. That was a horrible thing we did. Let me just go forget about it and drink, kind of thing. So for me, that's one of the things that helps me heal, that helps me progress and evolve, is writing. I don't particularly think I'm a writer. I wouldn't say I'm a writer, right? But I do think I'm a pretty decent songwriter, if that makes sense. at least from my standpoint. Again, I don't care if anyone listens. It doesn't bother me at all. I have so much fun with it and the creative process. It's rejuvenating. It fills me up. And so that's, yeah, one of the things that I do, that just helps with everyday, day to day stuff. Um, yeah,
Yeah, I think that, I so resonate with that. It's such a cathartic process being able to take something raw and maybe just like swirling around inside of you,
yeah,
feeling the emotion, a general idea, and alchemize it, right? And like be able to like put it together and have it essentially come to life
mm,
because it's a way of processing that few other outlets really they fall short of really being able to offer that same sort of catharsis.
right.
And so yeah, I think it's beautiful, but I think it's also beautiful that you've let go of being married to any sort of outcome of what happens with the music. And you're just like, I'm doing this because it's something for me. And look, if anything happens from it, you know, so be it. That's icing on the cake.
One of the things I love in this whole process is, so I'll write a song and I'll have like the bones of it, like the structure. Like here's the beginning, here's the middle, here's the end, and here's how I think it'll go. But one of my favorite things that I like to do is, okay, now who can I get to help me with this? It's almost like for me, it's like grabbing my ball and getting my friends and going to play basketball, right? Let's go get all my friends because I just want to have some fun. And so I try to think of who can play guitar on this song, who can play drums on this song. We're about to finish another song that is called Witnesses,
Mm.
and Jonathan Martin is going to be on it,
Oh,
right?
cool.
Yeah. And then I have a song that Levi the Poet is on, and I have a
Awesome.
song that a bunch of my buddies who are just world class musicians, they sing on it or they play on it. But one of my favorite things that I get to do is, so if I say, Derek, I want you to be on this song, and you say to me, okay, cool. What do you want me to do? I say, nope. I say, you sing or write or record whatever you hear in the song. And then we throw it together and we see what happens.
I love that.
Yeah. So on the EP that we put out, The Art of Shifting Seas, none of us were ever in the studio together because, first of all, it was during COVID, right? Second of all, schedules and things like that. So none of us, any given time, got to sit down together and be creative, which I guess there's a time and place for that, right? But this is a whole new experience for me, in a experiment, if you will. And so it was like, what do you hear? Do that. What do you hear? Do that. Like be you on the song kind of thing. And so we did that. And they would throw their ideas in and we would just mix it and see what happened with the song. And so for me, I hear in my head like how I want the song to go. But then these guys add their influence in on it. And then the song takes on this whole new life and goes this whole new direction. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I would have never expected the song to go that way. Right. And so if you listen back on The Art of Shifting Seas, it's literally that, where it's just like this amalgamation of ideas and things where we never shared them with each other. We just did it, dumped it in there, mixed the pot, and then this is the song. Most of them were like, this is incredible, right? This is phenomenal. There was one song where it was like, yeah, that didn't work. Right. And so we just stripped it down and made it vocals and piano. And it was like, that's all it needed. But for the most part, I love that uncertainty,
Mm.
right? Because I can tend to be a control freak and be like, I want to hear this and I want it to do this and I want it to go this way. But if I do that, then I'm just, I'm hamstringing the song and,
Yeah.
maybe I'm squeezing the life out of the song. And maybe if I give creative freedom and autonomy to these guys who know what they're doing and just say, run with it, bro. And then we'll just see what happens. Oh man, dude, the outcome are so surprising and it's just very fun,
Mm.
right? Again, to me, I just liken it to, I just get my ball and get my friends to come over and we just play, you know what I mean? So it's been a joy for me for sure, because it is that emotional outlet. It is a resource for me to maintain some semblance of balance, because in the job that I do, it's very easy to become unbalanced because we tend to just be reactionary to everything.
Yeah.
Right. And so what this helps me do is maintain that balance and start building preemptively with good coping mechanisms and things like that. So very helpful.
Absolutely. And, it's hard to build those practices that, are ultimately productive in the way of helping us work through our pain and our grief, right?
Absolutely.
I definitely understand turning to other coping mechanisms, whether it's like, I'm going to just, numb it out. I'll have a couple drinks and just forget about things. And, like that's totally fine and dandy. But I know for me, like, that definitely keeps me from being able to be, really present with my emotions, right? Going back to what we were even talking about earlier. And I think music allows us to really to connect with that in a deeper level
Mhm.
to where we are present to our emotions. We are present to things that are coming up. And that enables us to be able to then, to truly come into a place of greater clarity of who we are and what's going on and expand our consciousness around us. It's such a picture of life, right? Even in the creative process that you're talking about with your friends, it's like, hey, we're just going to see what happens, right? We're going to show up. We're
Right.
going to allow creativity to flow. And that so much is like, that's where the magic happens, right? And with life, right? When we show up, we let go of our expectations. We participate with that divine flow, right? That creativity, that really under that undercurrent behind all things. That's
Right.
where we see the magic happen, right? And I know for me, even as you were talking, I was like reminded about how lately, I don't know if you can relate to this, how so much of life, like there's a temptation for me, and maybe this is part of my upbringing within evangelicalism, maybe it's not, but how I can make so much of my life so serious and so
Right.
deep. And it's like I've got to like put a ton of pressure on just so much, right? But how can I be that kid who's picking up the ball and wanting to go play, right? Or I'm
Right.
just gonna have some fun with music or, like that to me is as spiritual as, meditating or, reading a book or whatever it might be or prayer or what like finding those outlets to just enjoy life and
Right.
to not take it so serious, like to laugh more, to find those moments to look forward to and connect with others over, so yeah, I that's what came to mind for me.
Yeah.
As and
That's great. And I think that's so true, right? We talk about, okay, so we've got music and we've got firefighting, but there's still the same kind of ideas that we can use in both worlds, right? So I am the health and wellness officer for my department, which is a big fancy title that means I'm the guy that everybody calls in crisis, right? So anything that my guys go through, whether it's a call, they went on some sort of familial thing, whatever, going through something, they call me and I help them find the resource that they need. I refer them to somebody, some sort of clinical help or a therapist or whatever, right? But oftentimes they just want to talk. And so I'll go meet them for coffee or whatever, and we just sit down and talk. And I hear them in their, what they're telling me, they're being pulled in so many different directions, right? And I think what's helpful is to be reminded that we've only been given so many God given energies for today,
yeah,
right? And when we spread ourselves too thin with what already happened today and what could happen, right? We've now rendered ourselves ineffective in every single area because we've only been given those God given energies for the present, right? And so I talk to my guys in terms of like time travel. Like, I know it's easy to do, but let's try not to time travel with what already happened. It already happened. And there's nothing we can do about it. And there's nothing we can do about tomorrow because it hasn't happened. There's no such thing. All we have is the now and the here. And what are you going to do with the time you've been given now? Right. And again, there's those temptations to time travel and be like, shoulda, woulda, couldas, and if
right.
onlys and things like that. Because you know how to, you know, you can probably relate. Like, we create so many things in our head that never even materialize.
Yeah,
And we give ourselves, so little time to cope and deal with the present because we're so worried about what might happen. Guess what, Derek? The ground might open up beneath us right now and swallow us whole, but we don't live our lives in that kind of fear. And yet we do, right? And so I always invite my guys to bring it back to the present. What is
Yeah.
going on today? And how can you be a better father today? How can you be a better husband today, or friend or employee or whatever? And just give yourself to, the here and the now, and be on purpose and intentional in the moment, and then let everything else fall where it may. I think it gives us a lot more clarity,
Yeah.
right? In the midst of those kinds of things. But it's also a very simple invitation,
Yeah.
right? The Psalms say, be still and know that I am God, right? That word still doesn't mean sit there and shut up and go in a closet and turn the light off and be weird and be awkward. It's just an invitation to be present. That's it. That's all the word means. Just be here and now. And so we can do that in songwriting. We can do that in whatever it is that you do, whatever hobby it is that you have that helps you maintain some balance. We can do that in firefighting. We can do that in those kinds of things. Those, like I said, those small disciplines. I teach my guys all the time about, they ask me, what do you do, David? And I say, okay, I'll tell you what I do. I try to do this every morning, right? I wake up and I try not to doom scroll on my phone as soon as I
Oh,
wake up,
oh yeah.
because all that does is puts us in the back seat, right? We're not in the driver's seat. We're in the back seat. Now we're reacting to everything on planet Earth that could kill us,
Mm,
right? And just look across your social media scrum today, right? Everybody's pissed off about these two boxers, right? And then 2 days before that, it was the Last Supper opening ceremonies. And then 2 days before that, it was whatever. And then 2 days before that, it was assassination attempt. And 2 days before that, like, it's just such cacophony, such chaos.
yeah.
And that can easily overwhelm you. So if
Absolutely.
we doom scroll, first thing we do, we're setting ourselves up for failure,
Mm,
right? So what I do is I wake up and I just practice the simple thing, the simple act of gratitude. What am I grateful for today? I woke up, there's breath in my lungs, right? I think about my wife and what we've gone through and the hell on earth. Like we were talking before, we started recording, the hell on earth that marriage is and can be. And there's so many of the battles you have to fight, but we're here and we made it. Like we made it to today, Friday. Like what? That's amazing. I'm grateful for my children. I'm grateful for my job. And so I just start thinking of little things that I'm grateful for. And you'd be shocked how your physiology lights up. Your
mm.
body goes, yes, yes, absolutely. And your body just lights up. And you start breaking old neural pathways and you start creating new, healthier ones, right? Just with the simple act of gratitude,
I love that.
right? We're not talking about something overly spiritual and overly esoteric. It's very grounded and simplistic, right? And then I just do a little breath work, right? Everything is breath work. Everything. We breathe 22,000 times a day. And how often do you think about that? Probably not much at all. But imagine if we could be very intentional about our breathing and place our breath into our physical bodies, right? We carry all of our stress quite literally in our bodies.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever read the book, The Body Keeps the Score.
I'm
Phenomenal.
Yeah.
But we literally carry our stresses in our physical bodies. So your back pain is probably not your back pain. It's probably some unresolved trauma or something, right? But imagine if we could get hyper focused even for a few minutes and just practice breath work, right? And just breathe and just be and belly breathe, right? Not like breathe from our diaphragm, not from our chest, because we tend to rush and be busy and we tend to breathe from our chest, but to belly breathe from our diaphragm and work on those things. Again, we're talking about gratitude and we're talking about breathing, right? But these are all things that could help every single one of us in every regard, right?
Yeah.
Whatever it is that you do. And then I go through a little liturgy every morning. I try to be formed by something outside of myself,
Yeah.
right? Because probably, you can probably relate to me. Like I was raised to believe that prayer is just, you make shit up, right? Just pray. And it's like, I don't know what that means. Right. And so if you go into prayer and you're angry, what kind of prayers are you going to pray? You're going to pray angry prayers. Or if you're an anxious person, what kind of prayers are you going to pray? You're going to pray anxious prayers. And so I pray these things that are outside of myself. And so I'm formed by something outside of myself. And now I feel grounded to something.
Mhm.
So the storm can come and my boat's not going anywhere because I've done these little practices of gratitude, breath work, and these little prayers that I say. They really set me up for success. So now I'm not necessarily reacting to every little thing that happens to me. I can pause and take a step back and be like, just more contemplative, right? Let me think about that. Hold on. Let me chew on that. Let me sleep on that. Let me get back to you on that instead of just reacting. Most of our society, it's some ungodly number, lives in our reactionary, which means we are living in our sympathetic mode,
Mhm.
which is our fight or flight response. Most people are living in our sympathetic mode, which is our fight or flight response. So if that's the case, cortisol is flooding our system. We are slowly poisoning ourselves because we don't know how to self-regulate.
Mm.
So if you can control your breathing, you can control your heart rate. If you can control your heart rate, you can take yourself out of your sympathetic mode back into your parasympathetic mode, which is your rest and digest mode, not necessarily digesting food, but digesting the situation, right? Taking a step back and looking at the bigger picture instead of just rushing in and react, right? Which is, again, what most of us do. Again, read your social media scrum, and everyone needs to fire off a response and show how much smarter they are when we don't really know anything about anything, you know, which is interesting to me. And I'm guilty of that too. Don't get me wrong. But those small disciplines, those small things are actually the big things.
Yeah.
Those are the things that help us self regulate. And those are the things that help us balance ourselves. So we're not just walking around just full of anxiety and full of fear and full of all of those other things that help us make really bad decisions.
Right.
You
Yeah,
know?
it's true. It is the simple that and the seemingly insignificant practices that have large dividends, right? That pay large dividends in the long run, right? And to, not only go back earlier to that story that it just something so simple that you did and showing up for somebody.
Right.
Oh, powerful. Think about how showing up for ourselves, putting the oxygen mask on first and finding those practices to quite literally have the breath, being conscious of our breath, being conscious of our bodies, present, right? Being present with the now
Mhm.
takes us out of that passenger seat, that sympathetic nervous system mode, and grounds us so that we're able to respond
Yeah.
and we're able to be
And that's the
aligned
word
with
right
our
there. That's the word, right? We're able to respond in good ways, not react, right?
right. Right. And to where, again, we're moving with intention and consciousness. And, I was thinking, that analogy of being in the passenger seat as you're doom scrolling, that's such a powerful picture. And it's so, so true how easy it is for that to set the tone for how we're moving through the day.
Right.
I definitely resonate with that. You know, I think even just in line with that, that there's, going back to Bible even just for a minute, like you reminded me earlier, just with even quoting that Psalm, I think about how James talks about it's the small things, right? It's the small rudder that steers the ship. It's the tongue that's that small thing that has power of life and death in it, right? I'm, obviously paraphrasing.
Sure.
Little spark that starts the fire, right? But there is power in those small things because
100%.
what unfolds. So, and it's a reminder to me. So I appreciate you sharing what you did because it's a reminder to me to not discount or devalue those little ways of caring for ourselves, those little moments of, okay, I'm going to breathe. Okay. I'm going to just take a moment and be like, I'm really grateful that I have the ability to have a conversation with a friend. Really grateful that, wow, it's a sunny day today and it's been storming lately, whatever it may be, but it takes us away from like, I'm so caught up in this future that doesn't exist, right? The past doesn't exist, but in memory, and the future doesn't exist except in our conceptualizing of what may or may not happen. All that we have is right here and right now. So, how can we practice showing up, slowing down, and just being, right? In the now.
I feel like if I were to write a self-help book, it would be very short, right? Because I feel like we're overcomplicating this, guys. Like we don't need books this thick on self-help. How about just give them and remind them, right? Right. No, nothing that I'm telling anybody or you in this podcast is anything that's remotely groundbreaking, right? I'm not telling you anything that you probably don't even know or already know. It's just helpful reminders, right? But it's those little things. It's not the big, like, we're not here to, all right, you want to become the best version of yourself. You've got to get in for 4 hours and you've got to, you know, beat yourself and flog yourself and do all these impossible things, right? That are unattainable and unachievable, right? People read those self-help books and then they try it and then their willpower gives up, right? And well, yeah, right? It makes sense. If you just give people small things that are achievable, hey, I know you have 5 minutes this morning. Why don't you just practice breathing for 5 minutes? I know you have 5 minutes, right? And then set yourself up for the rest of the day, like what you're saying, right? It's those things that are actually the big things. It's those things that actually change and can change who we are because now we actually achieved something, right? As opposed to this impossible idea that Goggins came up with or whatever. You know, it's like most people aren't going to do what that guy does.
That man is another level of crazy.
Yeah, right. And, there's a time and place for that. He's fine. But what if we gave people actual, practical, pragmatic things that they can actually do now in the few minutes that they have every single day?
Yeah.
I promise you, you can change everything. I teach my girls what's called the physiological side. Like, Daddy, I have a test today. Okay, let's practice some breathing real quick. And this is all it is. This is all it is. It's a big belly breath through the nose. At the top of that breath, another little, right? Another little suck in, and then an exhale through your mouth longer than your inhale. So it's like this. That's it. One breath. It's called the physiological sigh. There is scientific data that backs that one breath calms your central nervous system, slows your heart rate down, right? So imagine if you got a business meeting you got to go to and you're all nervous and you're frantic and the wife was nagging you and the kids are bugging you and the dog's barking and you got to leave and you forgot your wallet and all this on, right? But you got to go into the office and you got to kill it. So before you open that door, you go in, you do the physiological side, maybe once, twice, 3 times, and watch what happens. Just watch what happens. I did this with my daughter the other day. She was testing for her cosmetology license. She says, Daddy, I'm nervous. I'm nervous. I'm nervous. I said, hey, let's do something real quick. So we did that together. She goes, there's no way that just worked. Right. But I'm giving them tools in the toolbox, very simplistic tools that aren't, out there somewhere.
Right.
We're talking about
like Nirvana and start to meditate for hours and hours every day and, chanting. Yeah,
absolutely. So again, just very simple things that we can do that all of us can do, whenever you had time, right? I do it in the morning and I go to my office and I typically have my office to myself before everybody shows up. And I do my stuff there if I need to, but I try to be very diligent about it. And sometimes I don't get to, and that's okay, right? No shame in any of that. Cool. I just start up the next day. And if something happens the next day and I'm not able to do it, okay, no shame. I just start up the next day, right? And so everything that I do within these small disciplines, there's no shame.
Mm.
whatsoever. You do it as little as you want, or you do it as long as you want. You do it as often as you want, or you do it every single day if you can, right? But there's no shame in it, right?
Yeah.
Just pick it back up when you can. That's those, you know what I mean? And so now the pressure's off. Right? There's not like this performance thing that I have to do,
Oh
this
yeah.
obligation, I have to do it, because then it becomes problematic, I think.
Yeah.
But
And
if
then it becomes another task to check off and you're like,
yes,
"Ah, gotta do this.
right, right. So again, yeah, that's what I teach my guys. Trying to teach my kids that, and trying to teach myself that, really, right?
Yeah.
But yeah,
I love that. Thank you so much. I think that's probably a good place to land the plane and wrap up. So, any parting things that, beyond that you want to close things out with, including, if people want to connect with your music, where to find it, and, connect with you online in the metaverse in the world of the web.
like I said, man, when we started, I'm grateful and I'm so thankful that you thought of me to do this. I don't consider myself anything, man. I really don't. I don't consider myself anything but a blue collar dude. I just like to tell stories and I use my hands a lot. But I love how we connected. I don't even know how we connected. Maybe it was just on social media, but hey, this guy gets me, or I get this guy, and then the joke of, we might be family. But I'm so grateful that we connected. Truly. I think you and Rachel and your family are beautiful people. I appreciate what you do in the world. I appreciate how you do it. I appreciate what you say and how you say it. And I think that we absolutely 100% need more folks like you who have been through some things, who have experienced some ups and downs, right? The ebbs and flows of life, and have a story to tell. And I appreciate that you tell that story well. I really do. And so I'm grateful that I have friends around the country and I was able to connect with you. And I don't even remember that restaurant, but I was like, oh my God, this is incredible.
Oh yes, so good.
You know what I mean? But even that moment for me was very special. I don't even know if I articulated that to you there in the moment, but to me, that was a pinnacle of my trip there that one time. But I appreciate you, appreciate what you're doing, appreciate your family. Love you guys very much. And I'm grateful that we connected in the way that we did. And I hope that we can continue to become better friends and become better resources for each other. I remember you shot me a text a few months ago, just out of the blue. And you were like, hey man, just thinking about you. Love you. And I was like, God dang it. That was incredible. Thank you. You know what I mean? Like it's things like that. Again, it's those small things that help us propel through this, whatever this is, the life of hardship and difficulty and suffering. And you never know what little texts like that do for folks to help them rejuvenate themselves and rethink certain things. And so I'm just extremely grateful and thankful for you. Thank you.
Thank you for saying that. I'm truly thankful for you too. And I think that how you show up in the world is something that is so meaningful to me to witness as your friend. And it's such an honor to have you share your story, share your heart so openly in this way, because I know not only am I constantly moved by the way that you show up in the world, but I know so many others will be moved by it too, and hopefully be inspired to, extract the most out of life and to be fully present and fully aware of what knock at the door may show up,
Right.
and to be able to have those moments where, it may not seem like a big deal, but something as simple as a text to a friend or whatever it might be will be that, you have no idea how much this meant to me or my
Yeah.
family kind of moment. So I love you, man. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah. Thank you.